Welcome to the ITSPmagazine podcast network. You're listening to a new episode of the Cybeat podcast, where your host, award-winning author and cybercrime journalist, Deb Radcliff, interviews hackers, coders, intelligence experts, agents, officers, cybersecurity pros, and other interesting harbingers, heroes, and warriors. These conversations are sure to get you thinking. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hello, I'm Deb Radcliff, host of the Cybeat, part of ITSPmagazine at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Thanks for tuning in. In this podcast, we're speaking with Richard Thieme, who has been speaking and writing about security and intelligence, UFOs, and now a spy novel, along with other edgy issues for 30 years. Before that, as a clergyman, he actually listened to other secrets for another 20 years. As he says about his latest book, Mobius, quote, Mobius, a memoir, quote, is the least untruthful account he can give of the life of a professional spy. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, how are you, Deb?
Good. So Richard and I go way back in this industry. I think I met him 30 years ago when I was at one of my first hacker conferences ever. I remember the standing ovation you got from about 3,000 hackers in a packed session at DEF CON. And to me, it felt as if you were connected in a way to that community that I'd never seen before. It feels to me like you became sort of a priest to the hacker world, and I know many of them rely on you that way. Can you share with us some of those early days experiences you had with the hacker community and how it impacted you?
Of course. The first one I went to was 1996. It was DEF CON 4, actually, but it was 26 years ago. I've been speaking there for 26 straight years. Someone made a pie chart of how long different people had spoken there, and I guess I was in the lead, and since I've continued to speak every year, it's a lead you don't give up until, like Serena Williams, somebody comes along and beats you. But it's been an incredibly important part of my life. At that first HackerCon, I felt like I was home. I understood who was around me, and they got it. A mutual friend of ours, Kim Zetter, the journalist, said that what she got when she first heard me speak at DEF CON was how much I respected them and that they got that. And these were, at that time, young people. They weren't billionaires yet or millionaires. The industry wasn't a multi-billion-dollar industry. Hacking was very much on the edge, and a lot of the activity was of necessity illegal, and none of us really cared because we saw that the paradigm was changing and that what had been illegal was going to morph, as it does when the context of an entire society is altered, as the technologies were altering our society. The only way to get on in those days, to get to the internet in the early 90s, was to hack on. Young people didn't have endless bandwidth. They didn't have endless storage facilities like we do now. It wasn't all free or available for the taking. You had to go through your university server. You had to hack. And so you had to learn how to hack. And when you did that, you learned all sorts of other things, but you also discovered that you were attracted to that process and that activity because you loved the challenge of encountering a complex system that could be made to do things even its own makers or inventors hadn't conceived or thought about it being made to do. I loved them. It's really that basic. I love the people I met there. And that was also the place I connected with people from the CIA and from NSA. Some were undercover. Those were the days when Spot the Fed was a real game.
I was going to bring that up. I remember the Spot the Fed sessions. I even participated in them. They were fun.
Yeah, my friend Ken Olthoff, I think, was the first Fed spotted. And Ken actually became one of the closest friends I've ever had. We just became so close. And when he died, suddenly sitting in a chair watching television at 57, it was crushing. It was devastating to me because we talked about everything. And other people I met there also from the agencies became very close friends. And you mentioned being a priest. I had been a priest for about 20 years, and I became that because that's what I naturally was prone to do. I mean, I was empathetic, sympathetic, understanding, and I wasn't aggressively in pursuit of money. And that was suitable for that task. So I brought the native skills or abilities to being a clergyman, but you do it for 20 years, you get better. You learn what to do and what not to do. You learn how to use those native skills. And that's what attracted a number of the people in the intelligence community, as well as the security community. A number of them didn't have anyone else they could talk to about the things that burdened them or things they wanted to explore. And so I became very close to people, especially from NSA, and subsequently worked with them in a variety of ways in that world, as well as serving as a confidant to a number of them. Mm-hmm. So it was just a win-win-win all around for me. I loved the hackers. I grew with the con. I learned from them. It was just magical. It all goes back to Jeff Moss, who when I wrote to him, he said,
"Yep."
He said, "I'm looking for
experiences, by the way, about how DevCon impacted us in terms of." I felt the same way about the hackers that you do, and I also made tons of law enforcement and three-letter agency connections there as a journalist. So we have a parallel story going on about the same time frame too. Okay, didn't mean to interrupt. What about Jeff Moss and you?
Oh, I was just saying that he put out an email saying, I need a keynoter for DEF CON 4, and I wrote to him, and he said, all right, we'll try it. And part of his genius was he gave people a platform. Obviously, thousands of people, goons and all. And if you did it again the next year. And if you didn't do well at it, you didn't do it again. And that was his genius. He said, yeah, you can keynote. If I hadn't done it well, I would not have been back as a speaker every year. And you, as a journalist, brought a lot of those same skills. It's one of the reasons we connected with understanding and empathy. You had to present yourself to people so that in relationship with them, they did not feel exploited, but felt comfortable sharing with you the data and the details, both their life and work, that you needed in order to learn and grow as a journalist covering that complex scene. And you did that so successfully for all these years.
And going back to Jeff Moss and your speaking experience, I know that every session you've done there has been standing room only, and we're talking those rooms can fit thousands of people. Your last one, this previous DevCon in August 2022, you ended up having some commitments that you couldn't get out of. So you ended up sending a video of, you did it over live stream Zoom, I think is how you did it. I saw pictures of that, and that was a standing room only also, even though you weren't even physically there.
That really surprised me. There was, I guess, the topic and the fact that in 26 years, you do develop somewhat of a following and reputation. And some people were interested in what I had to say. But yeah, we used OBS, open broadcast, whatever service or system. It took a long time to get me comfortable with it, but they did. They provided all the technical support I needed to learn how to use it and deliver the presentation. And they said, we'll show it. And they said they had to close the doors because there were still people out in the hall when the room was full who couldn't get in. And I was sent a picture of it during the talk by our mutual friend Mark Hardy, and I was really shocked. I mean, yeah, there's a full room, as full as can be, of people looking at a screen, and it was a topic that they wanted. I got an email from the review committee saying, could you talk about UFOs again and aliens? And I had never talked about aliens per se. In that domain, you use weasel words like extraterrestrial. They're weasel words because you're distancing yourself from the full reality of what you're saying. And this time, they wanted it, and I delivered it, as well as a background on my work with UFOs over almost half a century, what we think we know about what we call the visitors. And they're humanoid often. They're living, intelligent creatures because somebody had to make this technology that has been so well documented for 70 years. We knew how it was 70 years ago. And the kinds of statements we're getting now from certain segments in the government about how it's real, and now it's being covered as news for the first time, literally 70 years, since 52, 53, which is when the government decided to debunk it while continuing to research it. Well, what if they learned about the technology in the meantime? I don't know. I don't know anyone who does know, but we know that the statement made by Cora Lorenzen, an early organizer of civilian UFO researchers, she said, Daddy doesn't know. And we think that's still true. Daddy doesn't know. If they knew how to do it, I can quote Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, who said to me directly, Richard, he said, if we could do what those guys know how to do, they would never have sent me to the moon in a Tin Lizzie. And he was right. And other pals inside agencies have said things like, quote, Richard, they're here. They're here. And my own exploration has confirmed that. There's no other excuse for what's been observed. But we still don't know how many, who, what kind of civilizations or societies, or what the agendas are. Even though we've been researching it scientifically and historically, literally since the 40s.
Is that why Foam came about? When did you publish the book Foam? And that's the one about the entity that keeps coming back in human form, trying to get it right again?
Yeah, that was certainly part of it. But the alien in Foam was really like Mobius, an alter ego. My wife read Foam, and she said, "This isn't an alien. I know this man." And no one else could have been so clear about what they knew and what they saw. He was someone struggling to become fully human, and those themes are repeated in the Mobius memoir. I did work closely with people in agencies and learned some of the burdens that the work can bring. Not everybody, perhaps, but an awful lot of people struggle to live with identities that are never true, with never telling the truth, with having family life where you never tell your wife or your children or your spouse, your husband, what you do or who you are. And you develop over decades such a distance from your core self, if there is such a thing, that you don't know who you are. And I've had people say that to me directly. So
and it creates the distance from the people around you. So in the book Mobius, I totally got that point that he couldn't have any real close relationships because he had to keep track of the lies he was telling all these different people about who he was. And I thought that was really interesting because I take the path of being super honest because I can't remember things like lie. Who did I lie to? Who did I say what to? But the other part of that I also thought was very interesting was the fact that he could get people to talk to him and tell him anything. And so he holds all these secrets like you do. And, you know, I've had rough spots in my life where I'm a single mom reporter and I've reached out to you at a conference in a hallway and I've told you blah, and you've been very supportive like a priest should be. And then, but you're sort of a spy in my mind too. And then I have an old pal in the NSA, he's probably one of yours too. He's like a father to me, same thing. He knows stuff about me that no one else knows. Why am I telling an NSA guy this? Why am I telling someone I know who is a secret seeker my secrets? Why is it so easy for me to do that with people like you guys?
Right. And that's a great question. When I was looking for quotes to put on Mobius, I revisited FX, who I was so glad survived a very difficult medical event. And FX wrote a beautiful line. He said, something about my empathy is over the top. People want to empty their minds to Richard, he said, something like that. And I think what you're pointing to, and spies are often very, very good at this. I can't quote it because I don't have the manuscript in front of me, but Mobius describes a spy that way. He was friendly, affable, and so on and so forth, and a liar, and a great liar. To be a spy in that kind of work, not analysis back at the computer, but to understand people that you're working with or recruiting or running, you have to have a degree of empathy that enables you to understand them. The difference is what you do with it. And I was talking about that in relationship to being a priest with one of my mentors from NSA. And I said, my goal is to create relationships so that the energy and information is a two-way street that moves back and forth between us, so that, going back to being a clergyman, I can enhance your sense of freedom and possibility in your own life, in your own power. And he said, we do exactly the same thing, but we do it to control people. And that's kind of the critical thing. Now you can say, well, clergy control too. Everybody controls. And I think Jennifer Granick pointed this out in the interviews she did with me about Mobius, a memoir. She said, everything you're describing really is true of everybody and their relationships. Nobody discloses everything. Everybody holds something back. Everybody presents a persona. Everybody uses empathy to enhance their power and position in the relationship. It's just a question of degree and what do you do with it?
Yeah,
well,
do you use it or do you abuse it?
That's exactly right. And Mobius comes after he blows the whistle in that book. He says he's done nothing but use and abuse and exploit people. And I'm waiting for paper to come to the printer so I can get out the sequel, which is finished, called The Mobius Vector.
Awesome. You and I are both on book 2 of our series, by the way. Mine's also, I'm waiting for it to come back from layout right now myself.
Yeah. Well, if you have extra paper, let me know. My printer does not want to print it on white papers. It doesn't look good. We're going to wait. But he's at the mercy of the paper mills, and there's only one. He used to have 4 that he could go to.
That says something about the publishing industry too, and traditional publishing might be changing right in front of our old people eyes.
Right, that's right. Well, the big publishers get all the paper. They have long-term contracts and they buy in bulk, and that's why us little guys wait. But in Mobius' memoir, in Mobius, the Mobius Vector, Mobius is now in a real relationship with a woman who, just like in Foam, Heidi, the masseuse, humanized the alien. I guess it's not an uncommon trope. There's this whole series on TV now about the alien who's being humanized. Well, Heinlein did that too, right? Long ago. And it's not uncommon, but being humanized, Mobius is practicing not exploiting or abusing people. He's practicing telling the truth. And he's astonished that when you tell the truth, it's like he says, a long drink of cold water on a summer afternoon. It's just feels so good, and it's so easy and effortless because the truth is always right there.
Yes, that's why I tell the truth. It's easy. Remembering lies is hard. When I used to watch soap operas in my unhappy married days, I'd be like, just tell the truth. Oh yeah, soap opera if you just told the truth.
Well, they never do that. There's a program my wife is asking me to watch called Virgin River, I guess. And it's kind of a soap opera at night. And I watched several episodes and I say, why doesn't somebody just say something? Tell the truth. Because, well, it would end the whole hour. So nobody comes clean in those things. They always hold it back. And my wife said, you don't understand. That's a very common thing for soap operas where you're shouting at the screen. Just tell them. Tell her.
So, I want to go full circle here in this conversation. So you're involved in a lot of things. I consider you to have a really strong, I think you might even have a degree in psychology. Your ministerial life, your speaking life, your book life, your tech life, and your life about aliens and UFOs. You have a way to tie all of this together as a lesson to the tech community. And I'd love to sort of wrap this up with how you have tied all this together and how you apply some of this to technology society. Can you go there?
Yes, I can try, because that's a great question and a difficult one. But I've been interested in a lot of things, as you say, immersed in a lot of things. I love to live on the edges where anomalies and unusual ways of thinking and acting emerge. And that characterizes all of those different domains that you mentioned for me. And, bottom line, Deb, I love people. I really, really love and relish interacting with people. And it was one of our colleagues in technologies, well-known guy who said, Richard's biggest problem is he thinks well of everybody. And he didn't think very well of anybody. If you listen to his talks, he has contempt for people he thinks are stupid, which is most people. But I don't. Empathy really does. I did learn in the ministry that if you listen to somebody long enough, you don't judge anybody. You listen with compassion, because you get that if you had been them with the same inputs into your life as they had, you would have done the same thing they did. And I listen to everybody, who did the worst things and the best things, and could understand how I could have been that person if I had been them. Well, that level of empathy enables you to cross over those borders into truly anomalous domains. UFOs have been ridiculed for so many years. Hackers have been ridiculed in the early days until they start making money.
You remember when the police and the feds were going after the hackers, and they were the ones who were telling them what's wrong with technology.
Right. The early days at DEF CON, you never knew who's going to be arrested and yanked off the stage.
And we saw a number of those happen at DEF CON. I even saw it happen at Black Hat with a Cisco researcher.
Right. And I did work closely with some of those young guys. They were young guys. I thought of them as the lost boys. They were unfairly persecuted. And especially as you know the world, as I have come to know it, so many people are doing so much worse, and they're off the hook because they're ins rather than outs. They get away with everything up to and including murder. And our current political situation is in tatters because people are getting away with things that used to be prosecutable, high crimes and misdemeanors. So with hackers, I perceive that they were creating a new world. And it was the same in the UFO domain. We've known since the 40s that UFOs were real. And it's developing these resources and sources that enhances my appreciation of what that means. I was talking to somebody who worked in the Pentagon for many years, and they said to me, the person sitting across the table from him, I won't describe the whole context, he said exactly the same thing you said. And what I just said was that they're real, they've been here a long time, and they're a real security threat. And I found out who that person was a vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Wow.
And a 4-star. Well, I've had a lot of those conversations where you don't divulge names, you don't give enough details for everybody to know exactly what you're talking about, but I integrate it and synthesize it in such a way that at some point, both with UFOs and with hackers, transforming the mental space of society, you realize you've crossed over and you're never coming back. You have gone through the looking glass into a way of understanding reality that separates you, does distance you from other people, because they live in what I call consensus reality, which is sustained and supported by agreement on the most shallow level, and you constitute a threat to them.
You call them noobs?
Humplings. Do you mean humplings? That was one of the words I've coined. Yeah, people use that term. That's my contribution in the English language, a humpling. Somebody in the middle of the hump who just inches along behind the masters who manipulate and lead them along the merry pathway. So at some point I realized, and it made speaking difficult. for a living because you had to choose your audiences. Hackers get it. People who live that way get it, but a huge number of people don't. And I've had people say to me from audiences, stop, I don't want to know that, or you're scaring me. And I say, well, break through the fear, because then there's light on the other side. But a lot of people are terrified of difference and of the simple truth and of knowing what's real. Well, what a hallmark of real UFO investigators and hackers alike, as well as spies, is we all want to know what's real. We share that. I've been called a need to know machine. And I want to know what the truth is about the reality in which, for a few decades of life, I have been privileged to exist. What's going on? How can you not want to know what's real? Well, hackers are experts at seeing the mistakes people make about reality and preying on them. UFO investigators had to learn how to understand the tools of deception and cover stories and ridicule and all the things that the people with power do to try to keep us further from the truth, that they can't keep us from, because we know how to get to it. And a hacker knows how to get to it, and a spy knows how to get to it. And then the joy is using the truth you found, even when somebody else doesn't know they lost. You have won, and that's my best stab at saying how those things all do link together. So yes, I've worked in all of those domains, and they've all turned out. The newscasts on the reality of UFOs, after 44 years I've been doing this, and I knew it was real, but finally they're admitting it. The things that I claimed about technology got me ridiculed as an idiot, and now that world I described is absolutely literally here. And the things I describe about the future, I know I can trust as equally insightful. Now there's a lot of AI in the talks, and robotics, and normal people don't understand the nature of the transformation through which we are going right now. And that's one of the reasons for the political rage and confusion and helplessness. They don't know, and they don't know that they don't know. They just know their salaries aren't as high as they were. They don't know. They know that jobs aren't as available as they were. They got used to some fat times, and they're very lean now, but they don't understand why. And they're angry and resentful and looking for someone to blame. And that's why we're really on the cusp of a real dangerous time. I did a talk just yesterday that was to a group of older white males, and put it that way. And I made some statements about the current political situation, and they just sat there staring at me. And I realized it was like the scene in Cabaret at the end, where the audience in the cafe has become the Third Reich. And the transition. And I realized we're in trouble. We are in real
And
trouble.
The reality is this stuff is already here. In my third book, I'm 40,000 words into book 3. It's been flying out of me, Richard. And I was looking up, I'm trying to get us all the way into a full-on cyber war. So I've got the East Coast power shut down through ransomware attacks. And China and France are also impacted. And I'm looking at this going, okay, so I really want it to be Russia and China ganging up. And they're making it look like Beijing got hacked when China actually did it to itself as a cover. And I started looking for Chinese ransomware gangs, because I was going to name some of the Chinese ransomware gangs. I have Conti and all the Russian ones memorized, but I didn't have the Chinese ones. I didn't use the word Russia in the search. And I found that Russia and Chinese hackers are working together to create combined ransomware programs already. And I was projecting that as a future thing in my third book. And things are happening so fast right now that people just don't see it.
Well, they don't see it. And beyond that, but akin to what you're describing, I had someone describe to me genuine cooperation between the CIA and the KGB. And that was something people don't understand. They think countries determine identity, and identity determines behavior. And no, expediency determines behavior. And can you ally with people who want the same thing you want for the moment in the way that will make them helpful to you and you helpful to them? and you tell people the CIA and the KGB have worked together in some ways in the past, KGB, and I mean during the Soviet Union, people can't get their minds around it. And what you're describing is levels of deception, levels of obfuscation, which are executed superbly. But you don't have to do too much to fool the normal humpling.
And it's so easy to do that with cyber too, and the hackers showed us that in the olden days with social engineering. And I like to call the hackers the people you and I know, and anybody who's doing it criminally or for abuse, like we talked about use and abuse of your empathetic skills, anybody who's abusing those, I just call them outright criminals or gangsters or state-sponsored actors. I don't like to call them hackers because I hate to muddy the name of the gray hats that you and I all know, the ones who warned us this is coming, the ones who are still warning us about cars and transportation systems and everything else that you can do with technology. And I know you feel the same way. That there's
I absolutely agree with you. I once defined, I said a black hat hacker is a hacker. A gray hat hacker is a hacker who put the truth down and knows where it is. And a white hat hacker is a hacker who put the truth down and forgot where he put it.
I love that.
Because you can't hack without hacking.
Yeah, that's a great note to end this on. I want to thank you for being here. We could talk forever, and I'm sure we'll have another interview because we both go back so far and we have so many stories we can share. Can you tell us, I've got Mobius, a memoir, available at Amazon, and themeworks.com, THIEMEWORKS.com. Do you have any other place you would recommend they go pick up your books?
Those are the best places. If you write to me through ThemeWorks, through the website, same price as Amazon, and I sign it and mail it to you. So either one works, and it's of course on Kindle as well as in print through Amazon.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, and thank you, audience, for tuning in. Tune in next time. We'll talk to you in the near future.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the SciBeat Podcast with Deb Radcliff, part of the ITSPmagazine podcast network. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share this channel and ITSPmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey.